Welcome to CV Ministries Church Security Through Prevention podcast. I am your host, Daniel Blevins. My guest this week is James McGarvey. James is one of three of the church safety guys and has brought his many years as an EMT and firefighter to his 10 years of leading his safety team at his church. James has had many roles at his church over the years and sees the importance of having a ministry focus in church safety and security. As you will hear today, James has written several books that are impacting lives in and out of the church. This is a two-part podcast, and we could have just kept going. If you don't know already, Amazon has recently jumped into hosting podcasts, and we can be found there now. Amazon joins a multitude of other locations that are playing our podcasts, so it's not too hard to find where we're at. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And as always, as you listen, think about who and what topics you'd like to hear in the future. Please take a few minutes and click on the Google review link that we've included in the show notes. And go out to Google and leave us a great review. All right, so let's get to know James and the ministry work that he is doing. James, welcome to the Church Security Through Prevention podcast.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate you asking me to spend some time with you today.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had you guys had me on, just so people know, on your Facebook page, church. You explain your Facebook page, but on your page, every Sunday night, is it every Sunday night that you do a live interview with somebody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it's actually Church Safety and Security is the name of the Facebook group. And every Sunday evening, usually at about 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live broadcast. And originally, it started out as just something that Paul Buckner and I, he's one of the other hosts, we just kind of did in our spare time. And honestly, it was mostly because we had been just inundated with so many different churches asking us for information, like, how just specifically, like, how do you do this particular task, or, what's the best practice, or that sort of thing for church safety and security. And so the more we got into it, the more we realized that we really had a great audience. We had a great level of engagement. And, Paul, God really kind of moved it from that point. If you had asked either of us a year ago if we would be doing a broadcast every Sunday night that people, on both sides of the country would be listening to, we would probably laugh at it. But we enjoy it. We have a lot of fun doing it, and part of our focus with it has really just been to have fun and take sometimes a very serious topic and not make fun of it, but at the same time, just be a little bit more relaxing or relaxed about that topic for folks that tune in and listen and certainly are in that experience. So
I thoroughly enjoyed my time on your guys' podcast. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's great to see, the three of us, or the four of us, had never really met each other before. And sure. Well, I take that back. Come to find out in the podcast, you and I had met before. And right. at a seminar, at a sheepdog seminar. But really we hadn't. And what's really cool is that it's as brothers in Christ, we can get together. We have a very similar mindset on what God has called us to do. And it was really interesting in the podcast to find out that we all kind of came from similar areas where we are today. And it goes back to, God doesn't necessarily call the equipped, he equips the called. And in each of our stories, God equipped us in different ways to where we are now, which was kind of cool to see. And it was a lot of fun. And I would encourage anybody to check out the Facebook page, because I think it is one of the best forums out there for people to ask questions, to get information, to create discussion, and everybody's really respectful of each other and their opinions in that, which is great to see as well. That it's not, that it's, nobody's going one way or the other. So it's been, I've enjoyed it. It's one of the ones that I hit pretty frequently to see what's going on it, and what kind of discussions are happening.
Sure. Well, thank you for the compliment with it. Again, when initially, I believe I started the group, and it was really after seeing, I didn't see a whole lot out there on social media that was very ministry based. And from the beginning, one of the differences to me about church safety and security has been that it has to be ministry focused. If it's not ministry focused within the body of Christ, then we're just playing security guard, and we're just going through the motions. And so from the time that I started my team at my church, moving forward, my whole focus was not just how can we protect the body of Christ, but how can we build into each other, engage in each other, and make a difference as a support group in our lives as we serve. Because without that component, what I've found over the years, and I'm sure you've seen the same thing, is that people get really burnt out very quickly, whether it's a leader or somebody that's just volunteering. And so I wanted to create an environment that was supportive of that. And when I went online, I didn't really see too many groups that supported that. I saw a lot of great groups that had tactical information, a lot of great groups that had medical information, but it was all black and white. It wasn't how do you coach someone? How do you be gracious with the love of Christ? How do you keep your doors open to do what the church is purpose is to do, but at the same time still run an effective ministry to keep folks safe. And so initially, honestly, when I started it, I started sharing best practices, and I thought, hey, this is a great little group. We've got a couple hundred people, and I think we're coming into the 4th year now, and we're actually one of the largest groups on social media now. But it was just one day, I woke up and I'm like, wow, there's people on here that that are blessed by this, and that's where I kind of met Paul. Paul and I both had done a lot of videos, and I reached out to him and I said, look, I said, I think the church safety guys, and we are an official nonprofit organization ministry. And, it just got to the point where I said, look, I think God is really moving us in a direction where, our mission and goal can be to get other church safety organizations, training organizations known well, but at the same time, we can step in and we can also be a blessing. And, it's not a competition. There's some great organizations and great groups out there that train. Us being able to say, look, we can't go everywhere. We occasionally will do conferences and that sort of thing, but we can't go to every church and train, but we can step in and we can funnel resources to that church, including saying, okay, your church is in Florida. We've got some great resources in Florida. And in a lot of cases, reaching out to those resources, they've offered a discounted rate, or we just have a partnership with them where the resources are available at a much, much decent level. And not only that, but it's also just a blessing to everyone involved, because in most cases, the folks that we work with are also nonprofits. And, there's a difference to me between a nonprofit and a ministry based church training company versus somebody that's just out there training in security. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot of great security companies out there that have changed their pattern of training and molded programs and put together programs for churches. But I think that, we've actually had the opportunity to get to know better, and we've seen their heart and we've seen their ministry and how they interact with churches. And so for us, it's easy for us to say, hey, look, we've got this great partnership with somebody in Michigan. They do a fantastic job. They love the Lord. They're a great resource, and just kind of endorse folks like that. And, I look at it very much like, I think how you kind of mentioned it with, when you were on our show, which was just, who am I? I'm just kind of the person that every day I get up and I check my email and stuff, and I'm like, wow, okay, I wouldn't have seen myself in this place a few years ago. But God's blessed it, and we've been able to engage with churches and engage as a social media, mover. And it's been I think it's been a great blessing. So.
Yeah, and I think you make a very good point, and it's something that we are very conscientious of. As we do seminars around the country, training hands-on, that we let them know that we're not the solution, or we're going to wet your whistle, but we want you to seek out those local resources, and we try to have those local resources. Either with a booth or something that comes, so that they can network with them right away. Because you're right. I mean, that's where the community is, and that's where they need to. And you guys being that clearinghouse or kind of helping them, pointing them in that direction, I think is huge, because they have to do this, all the time. Well, you want them to consistently be training and have people to kind of help come alongside them and support them in their ministry, because it is a ministry.
Absolutely. One of the crazy things is, and this kind of revealed itself to me about a year ago. I had a church reach out to me, a local church in Ohio, where I'm based out of, and they reached out to me and they said, "Look, we're about ready to spend, I think it was $1,500 to one of these local trainers to bring this trainer in, and this trainer is advertising church security training and all this stuff." And I had never heard of the individual, and so I started doing a little bit of research, and I went back to the church and I said, "You know what? I think that we could probably get you for the same amount that you're interested." Because, again, I mean, as well as I do, churches don't have a lot of money and resources, and
Right.
often, $1,500 is a crazy large amount of money. And so I just said, look, I said, this particular trainer, I don't know them. They look kind of sketchy, but I can tell you right now, I know, 3 or 4 organizations that are around the US that would, at a drop of a hat, come to help you and would work within your budget and would do this. And they were blown away, and they were very appreciative. And they came back, and said, look, thank you so much. We appreciate what you guys are doing, and that sort of thing. So that kind of, to me, that kind of made the light bulb go on. I mean, there are tons of, and it seems like, unfortunately, every time there's an event out in the, with churches in the United States, all of these companies start popping up and, saying, oh, hey, we teach church safety and security, and we can do this or that too. But from the beginning, like I said, we've kind of tried to focus on steering churches to folks that we felt really supported a ministry emphasis, and always training. One of our taglines has been Semper Disciplina, which is Latin for always training. And none of us, I mean, we all, what you said earlier, we all come from a very similar background to you, in that we kind of feel like we were pulled in, voluntold maybe, into church safety, but through the years we've learned the hard way, and we've learned how to how to cut our teeth, so to speak, on making that happen. And so with the resources we have, we're just looking at it now and saying, look, I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I made 10 or 15 years ago. There's an easier way to do this. So again, I mean, that's really been kind of our emphasis. And a lot of times people, they scratch their heads and they're like, look, are you, because it is kind of competitive. So we've had people say, so are you taking over the world in church training? And we're like, no. But being a foundation, I mean, we've advertised for, church safety conferences. We've had a tremendous impact on some conferences to encourage people to go there. And again, to me, it's interesting to be at a conference and have someone walk up to me. I still can't get over it. You're probably more used to this than I am, but somebody will come up to me and say, "Hey, I watch you guys every Sunday night on your broadcast. Thank you so much for what you're doing." And at that point, I'm kind of like, "Oh, okay. Thank you." I'm still not sure how to take the compliment, but.
We just want to take a quick break here to let you know how to contact us and where to find out more about our national seminar. I see communities that may know why church security is important, but they may not be doing anything about it or don't know how to do it well. Our national seminars are for ushers, greeters, children's workers, staff, volunteers, your security teams, and other ministries in your community. We say that this is a level 1 training that is designed to help equip you to serve well in your various ministries while maintaining a safe place for people to come. Getting churches on the same or similar page when it comes to security will only make the community safer as well. The easiest way to find out more information or to contact us is to go to cv-ministries.com. There you'll find a variety of training DVDs and books, with more being developed all the time. There's also a place at the bottom of the page where you can sign up for our monthly newsletter and to be able to get more information. We would love your feedback on topics or guests that you would like to hear on future podcasts. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, let's get back to the podcast. I'm in that same boat. It is, because it is different. It's not what I'm seeking. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you got people that absolutely are, seeking that. Yeah, you make a great point, several great points in that. I think, when a tragedy happens, you're right. Companies come out of the woodwork, and oftentimes they're feeding on the fears of the church. And right. they're going to that worst case scenario, and it's most likely or oftentimes strictly that firearm piece.
Sure.
And we kind of talked about it, I think, when we were on your podcast. Just that the likelihood of that is remote. Doesn't mean we don't train for it, but it is remote, and that we can't forget the other aspect of ministry. And churches do have so this has kind of been fun because I've been on church staff a couple times. I recognize that, funds are not, you have to be very wise and a good steward of those funds. And so when I left church staff to do this full time, one thing we said when we started doing our seminars was, okay, we're not going to charge the churches. We don't want the church to incur any expense in bringing a seminar in, and it has worked really well to where we just do it off of the registrations,
Sure.
For that, and then it just frees up the church. Most churches, the response I get is, really, yeah, really, we're just looking for a place for you to host it. We'll take care of the rest. And they love that. And I look at a lot of the church security companies, and I talk with a lot of different people that have the similar ministry mindset in it. It's not a competition. I don't look at anybody as a competition in this that is doing it well. There's one church security company, and I won't name it, but they do look at it as a competition, and it's unfortunate. But that's where then where's your heart? Is it, in that? Is it for
Right.
profit or is it for ministry? Because it doesn't need to be a competition. With all the churches that are in America that need to be
Right.
trained, realistically, there's barely a handful, of companies that are doing it nationally, and there's several regional ones
Sure.
to choose from. So there's a lot there, and it's unfortunate when I run across somebody that does have that mindset, that competition mindset in how they're doing business, and it's like, well, we don't have to be that way. I can learn from you. I always look to how can I learn from somebody else and what they're doing.
Well, and I think to your point with that, I think that much of it is just your attitude, and again, like you mentioned, where's your heart with it. We do training at my church. We do training several times a year, and often we'll have local law enforcement come in and they'll practice with us on certain things. And, we've gotten to the point where we'll open the doors to other churches coming in as well to kind of see how we do things and really try and build community. And, we've had, I think once or twice where we actually had a local college police department come in, and they saw how we were training and doing things, and they were like completely baffled and shocked. And they said, we've never seen a church actually perform and be as proficient. And so, we actually had a great opportunity to be to witness to them and to be honest and open. And, some of those, even where we are, some of, two of those individuals actually that I've worked with law enforcement, have started coming to church. And, we've had a great ministry to those folks to say, hey, thanks for coming in and helping us. But, there's something else that you need here. And so I think, in a sense, too, I think churches that are out there, if they have, if they're listening to your podcast, I think that if it's a big church, they have the resources and the opportunity to mentor and help smaller churches as well. And just because you think maybe you're operating the best way on something doesn't mean that you can't go talk to someone else. There are individuals in church communities around the U.S. that I regularly talk to that, I'll call and say, hey, I'm dealing with this, at my church, or this is going on. How do you guys handle it? So to your point about the competition aspect of it, it does seem like sometimes people get a little possessive about that. But there's plenty, I look at it as just a wide environment of plenty of purposes. And, just like I know some of the church safety directors locally at different churches, and we get together on occasion to go through stuff and talk about stuff. There's plenty of ministry here, and there's plenty of opportunity for people to jump in and serve and be beneficial. So.
Yeah, there's no shortage, and I'll be the first to admit that when I meet somebody that or whatever the case is, that more than likely you know more than me anyway.
Sure.
If you want to tell me you know more, then great. But yeah, I have no doubt. I'm always learning. From different people, and I just love that aspect of it. Backing up a little bit, so. How did your church, just going to like just kind of a practical thing for a second. Not that,
Sure.
let me rephrase that. Not like any of this isn't practical, but if we look at your church, how did you guys come to the realization that you needed to stand up a safety and security team?
Sure, that's a fair question. So my background has been in fire and EMS and public safety, and I stepped away from it shortly after I moved to Columbus, Ohio. And part of the reason I stepped away was because of my physical. Just my body. I mean, honestly, I think I'm old now, but I had gotten to the point where I'd had several surgeries and I just couldn't do it anymore physically. But I still love to do it. And so we had started attending a church in Columbus as soon as we moved. And really quickly, that was kind of a God thing, but we really quickly got plugged in. And I think it was our second or third Sunday there, we were sitting in a Sunday school class, and a gentleman started having chest pains. And so I kind of jumped up and I went over to him and I said, are you okay? Can I help you? That sort of thing. And so that honestly, I mean, that kind of started it. We just, as the church started growing with the community, we found that many times when we did a big activity like VBS, Vacation Bible School, or we used to have weekend youth retreats where we'd have, 10, 12 churches show up with hundreds of kids. We just found that, because we were doing things, games and different things, programs and activities, we just found that a lot of times kids would get hurt or something would happen. And we didn't really have a system of responding or a way to respond to whatever happened. And so one year we were doing Vacation Bible School, and one of the pastors came to me and he said, I'm going to do this game. And this is we're doing a water game. And I said, okay. And he said, I made this slip and slide through our field. And we have a massive soccer field next to our church. So he's like, come on out here. I want to show you. So we walk out there, and I kid you not, they've got tarps down and they're spraying these tarps, and there's water and there's soap. And at the bottom of it's kind of a small indentation in the ground. At the bottom, they're holding these tarps down with cinder blocks.
Oh,
and I'm like,
goodness.
Exactly. I'm like looking at this and I'm like, okay, let's have a little bit of common sense here. And I turned to the pastor and I said, you're really going to kill me with this. And he's like, what are you talking about? This is going to be awesome. And I said, yeah, not after the kid hits the cinder block sliding down, racing to slide down this. So, we kind of joking around started saying, you know what, we need to have a crew to respond to stuff just for Vacation Bible School. And so from that, I started talking to a few people, and I put together a group of folks that were trained, and we would respond. And there was a few years doing it that we felt like it was needed. For us, and this is going to sound pretty crazy, but for us, we counted it as a success to get through Vacation Bible School without calling an ambulance for something.
Absolutely. That's a huge success.
So, the last year that we had to call them, we said, okay, it doesn't matter. And we had more experiences throughout the year, as the church was running through services and special events and stuff like that. And so from VBS, after we had established a team for specifically that event, two of the pastors came to me and said, look, you did a great job with running a team for VBS. What about if we did this all the time and we had a ministry? And so for the longest time, I was in charge of just the medical side of it. And we had a separate individual that did security, and they would, monitor the cameras and stay out in the parking lot and kind of keep an eye on stuff. And the more we worked together, the more crossover there was just between people. And so that, I think it was probably about 10 years ago, that gentleman stepped down and had some had some life changes. And so I went to the senior pastor and I said, look, I've never been in charge of security before. I've worked with law enforcement. I've been in security type roles at conferences and stuff like that. But I said, here's my idea and here's my vision. And that's that we have one team that responds to everything. It's a ministry, and almost like a small group setting where we can impact people's lives that serve. And, and I have this idea and picture in my head. And the pastor was like, you know what? I like it. Go for it. So, at the end of the day, that's how it kind of became what it is today. And, we have right now, we have one team. We handle events, regular services, and, we track things. So if an incident happens, an incident report gets filled out, that information actually gets tracked. So every 6 months I can go in and I can look at, okay, what exactly are we putting our resources into? And that for a long time, because, there was a certain period of time, and I'm sure you could agree with this too, where a lot of folks were just like, security, what? We don't need, what do you need security for at church? Right. And they're like, oh, you guys are just playing around. And, so we were able to take the incidents that we responded to and said, look, we've been called X number of times. We've responded to X number of medical incidents. And slowly, people started realizing that we weren't fooling around, that we were doing our best to mitigate this stuff. And several large things happened in the church. And, we were there, and God blessed us with a very positive outcome. And so that kind of set the ground from that point forward. That was about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, with people saying, oh, I realized that this is a valid ministry and that you guys are doing this very professionally. And, one of the things I usually say, our church membership fluctuates between 800 and 1,200 people. And growing up, I grew up in a small farm community where we had 1,200 people. So,
Right.
From that standpoint, I'm like, okay, they had their own police department. Right. So I'm like, it's not crazy for a church to have some type of team that responds to this stuff when, we see influxes of that many people. So
Part 2 of this podcast will come next week. I hope that you'll come back as I continue my conversation with James McGarvey. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this podcast. If you really enjoyed it and you found it of benefit to you, we really appreciate your feedback. There's several different ways that you can provide us feedback. One of them is to subscribe to the podcast, is to share it with others, and another is to contact us directly, particularly if you have any questions or concerns, or you want more information on how to host a seminar in your community. You can contact me directly at danielblevins@cv@heart.com, or you can go to our website. That's cv-ministries.com. Both of those will get you in the right direction. Until next time, make sure that you're out there protecting the flock with a heart of service.